Okay, episode 2 in our Introduction to Programming Back to Basics platform from scratch. Now, what this episode is, we're going to start talking about the, let's see, I should change the topic here. The topic should be, well, we'll start scripting things. I'm not going to, okay, we'll start scripting things. All right, easy enough. So we left off last time. We had set up a simple environment using tile maps, and we had set up our little character just as an animated sprite. So that's all it can do at this point. We hit play, and all it does is blink. We're a blinking character and nothing else going on. So we're going to avoid code for just a bit and set up some things about the environment, set up some components on each of these things so that they can interact with one another. All right, so let's click on our hero. And the first thing we want to do is we want to enable physics to work on our hero. So in order to do that, our hero is going to need some components. Our hero is going to need a rigid body 2D, so that physics will interact with it. And it will also need some type of collider. Okay, so we will use what is called a Capsule Collider. And in its default state, a Capsule Collider, let's click on Scene over here. A Capsule Collider looks an awful lot like a circle. And we're going to squeeze the sides just a little bit. And you can see it is sort of a circle, but it's more a capsule. It has you can flatten out the sides and the bottom, that sort of thing. So we're going to go ahead, create that Capsule Collider 2D. And we have a rigid body 2D here for our little character. So now that it has a rigid body 2D, if I press play, you'll see in the game that our character falls because now gravity has an effect on our character. So in File Project Settings, we could see Physics 2D. Go to this Project Settings and look at the Physics 2D tab. Negative 9.81 means gravity is pointing down, and that's fine. Okay, the player now has gravity. But we don't want our hero to fall through everything, so we need to create some things for the character to collide with. Right? It has a collider, and we need other colliders. And our environment, obviously, is the thing we want it to collide with. Okay, so we'll go to our grid, our platform's tile map here, and we're going to add a component to that. We add a component which is a tile map collider 2D. All right, so now it has a collider, and if we press play, immediately our character just drops down and comes to rest on the platform. Okay, and we can select our little player over here in the scene, and we can even move our player around if we wanted to. And you'll see what happened. I let the player drop into the scene at another location. I can do things. I can move him around. Whoops. And let's see. Pick him up, let him drop again. Poor little character. Subject to physics. Yes, yes. And if I did this, I could even have it fall. Whoops. You'll see that the ramp here is doing the right thing. Oh, there goes our character off the edge of the world. Because there is a physics shape that the tile map editor, the sprite editor has created for us here, right? So even though these are square tiles, it has generated a nice set of colliders for this to collide with, which is kind of cool. All right, so let's bring back the tile map editor here. 2D tile palette. And we'll put it once again sort of over on the side. Well, I gotta do that. And then push it over to the side over here. So we can see, okay, there it is now. So we've added our two basic physics objects, but of course now the player has no way of moving. We have no input yet. So now let's get into some scripting. All right. So go to the hero, and the hero needs some sort of controller. All right. And we will add a component called it'll be a new script, and we'll call it hero controller. Okay, so that's going to be the thing that moves the hero. Create an add, and this will create a Visual Studio compatible. So it's going to be basically a C# script here. I can double click on it, it'll bring me to Visual Studio. And this is a C# class that has been created to control the character, right? Every C# class here automatically starts off, it is inheriting from mono behavior, so it knows how to talk to Unity. And I'm not going to go into too many details on this, but we have a start and an update routine. These are the things that are kind of the template for our hero here, our interaction with our hero. So the main thing we want to do with our hero is we want to somehow push our hero around. Okay, now I'm going to jump forward here. We've discussed some things in class about using physics and input controllers and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and make some assumptions. I'm going to say, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to create a movement vector, right? Movement, or we'll call it hero movement. And what hero movement is going to be, it's going to be a vector2 hero movement. Okay, so what should hero movement be? Hero movement equals, and we're going to say it has to be two things. It needs two components, an x and a y. So we're going to say new vector2, whoops. And the two things we're going to put in there are going to be input dot get axis. Use get axis, and for x we're going to use horizontal, and for y we're going to use vertical. Okay, and we have to have a semicolon at the end of our line. So that's going to be, by default, our hero movement. Okay, so let's try something here. We're going to do something where we say, okay, because hero movement is a vector, if nothing is going on, if we have no movement at all, that vector's magnitude is going to be 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, for starters, how can we do this? We'll say transform dot, or I could even just say get component, because what I want to mess with here is I want to mess with the rigid body 2D of the player, of the hero, right? So I can say get component rigid body 2D, and I can do things to that rigid body. So for example, I could say add force. Okay, and if I said add force hero movement, what that means is basically add a force to the hero according to whatever the joystick is set to, right? So let's try that out. Now, you'll see also it wants a force mode 2D. Now in this case, for starters, just to make things simple, let's just say force mode 2D impulse. And that means just go ahead and apply a force immediately with full strength there. Now, what's going to happen here, it's really gonna fire quickly. So how can we prevent that? If input get key down, get key, I think I can do that. And we'll say key code D. Or, so what I'm doing here is I'm going to cheat a little bit, just for now. I'm going to say, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, if it's the key code is A or the key code is D, if one of those has just been pressed, I will add that force. Okay, let's see if that works. So otherwise, I'm going to add way too much force all the time. So just for demonstration purposes, let's just go hit play. And you'll see I added a force that kind of pushed it in one direction. Try to add that force. And if we see rigid body 2D, see it's setting it to 0. It's going to try to move it one direction to the other. So it's trying to push it. It's trying to push the player. It's not doing a heck of a good job here. So one of the things that we're learning is that we want to not let the player sort of roll around on the ground like that. So the one thing we're going to do at first is we're going to freeze this rotation. Okay. So now if the player gets a force, it's going to get pushed, but not necessarily roll. Okay. So I'm trying to add a force now, and it doesn't seem to really be doing that. Okay. Right? It just adds a quick instantaneous force. So if I tap the key really fast, then maybe it works. And the reason for this is that it's just a tiny little incremental, using the joystick is tiny incremental changes right now. So what I could do, I think that's legitimate, get axis raw, no smoothing filtering, no, so it's going to be just immediately whatever it is. And since I'm pressing a key, it's going to be 1 or 0. So here, oops. This means it's going to be full on, full off sort of thing. So now every time I tap the key, I'm going to add that force. Oh, my poor little character has a hard time going up here. There's not enough force to really push him up that slope there. So I'm not in love with the way that this controller works here at this point. So we're saying basically, okay, apply a force if you've tapped the key. Not the best in the world. So how about instead we do something different? We're just going to say this is the simple version. We did this in class. We said get component, and we say velocity equals hero movement. Okay. So now the difference being we're going to actually just go ahead and apply this hero movement directly as a velocity of the player. We're not going to try to add it as a force. Adding a force is a little bit trickier if you haven't followed that in class already. So let's do it this way. We're going to say, okay, now, I probably didn't save my script there, didn't I? Here? No, I did not. I did not. So let's save that, come back over here, and we'll see. Now the player will have a velocity. If I press the key, there's the D key, I'm holding it down. And eventually it'll fall due to gravity. Now the bad thing about this is that the joystick is constantly being reported. So the joystick is sort of always overriding what is going on with normal physics, especially the gravity up and down. So let's try to do this. You'll see here, instead of gravity acting on the player, what's happening is the joystick is causing the movement up and down, the vertical movement to be kind of clipped to that. All right. So what I want to do instead is I'm going to say, well, the hero's movement, I want to leave the hero's movement to be whatever the normal velocity would be in terms of the y value. Okay, hero movement dot y, I want that to be this normal value, whatever the Unity engine was going to do with it anyway, dot y. Okay, so I'm not using this axis. I'm only using the horizontal. So this one, I could have even done this. I could have said, all right, let's do this. We'll copy, paste that, and we're going to comment out one version. All right, so this secondary version, all right, so this is going to say, all right, hero movement Y is set to whatever the hero's already doing. So gravity will affect it, and the joystick will not in the Y direction. Right? So now you'll see it does move left and right, but then if I fall off this platform, it will sort of do the right thing. I'll go down the slope. If I push up, it'll do the right thing. But if I tried using the W and the S key, that has no effect. Right? It's just the physics engine that's controlling the motion of the character up and down. So this is sort of the simplest character controller you could possibly have, where you're just setting the velocity of the character according to the joystick. And maybe you say, well, you know what, that is just too darn slow, so let's make it a little bit quicker. So we want to scale this value. So this value that comes in here, I'm going to go ahead and make this scaled by times h speed, right, which is going to be the horizontal speed. And I will make that a float called h speed. And by default, I'll set it to 3. 3f for a float, horizontal speed. And because it's public, if I made it public, I'll be able to change that using Unity interface as well. Okay. So now my character will move at a quicker pace here. But it's actually kind of starting to feel a little more game-like, right? My character can move around. And you'll notice even he gets a little trajectory going. It's a little, catches some air there. All right. All right. So we'll use that. We'll start with that. And we'll stop there. That's 18 minutes. And we got our character kind of moving, and we ran into some problems. So we'll stop there.